Hi, in this video I want to talk about how once you've already made your mistakes, you can't go back and change or correct for them, and how many people can use that as some sort of a rationalization for making mistakes, and in how many circumstances people use that and they forget that they made the mistake and that you can correct for the mistake. I guess this comes down to human psychology. Not only human psychology, but recognition of how things work. You learn things, you do things, you make mistakes to learn from them. You don't make mistakes to rationalize them, say they're already part of the past, and justify what you did by rationalizing that it's something that you can't change. And I think that's what many people do, is they rationalize. They know they can't change it. I think in their deepest heart of hearts, they can realize that what they did was wrong, but they have to realize you did it, you learned a lesson. Take something out of the circumstance and prevent something like that or something even worse from happening in the future. And I think in many cases that's what we can do. You can try your best to prevent something worse from happening. And that's the ultimate goal when you're trying to do these things and correct for the mistakes of the past. So when you're doing those kinds of things, yes, you try your best to correct the mistakes, learn your lesson, make sure that you take something out of the circumstance where it didn't turn out that well. If someone wrongs someone else, what you do is you don't rationalize it by saying it's a thing of the past and do it again and justify it. You made a mistake. Now that you made the mistake, you might as well go full on head in, right? You might as well just keep on making the same mistake because you rationalized it before. You might as well rationalize it again. Either be it some kind of addiction or just rationalizing it, because once you make a mistake, you go over the edge. And I think you may have felt something where you made a mistake. You might as well make it again because I made the mistake. I've been stupid this long. I might as well keep on being stupid instead of just saying I was stupid and compensating for it in the opposite way, by correcting for the mistake and making up for it. Instead of doing that, it's too much of an ego thing. It hurts your ego too much to accept that you're wrong for so long, so you decide to say, no, I'm just going to keep going in this direction. Or you're so fully deluded by some kind of psychological mistake that you decide to use that as a rationalization. But once I think something's happened, say, oops, I made a mistake, I slipped, and I had a knife in my hand, and there was a person next to me and I chopped their finger off. The right reaction isn't to say, "Oh, screw it, I don't care." If I, you don't, there's no. First of all, the thing is, you don't get mad at another person for the person. Um, God damn, this is more of a psychological video than I thought it would be. But yeah, you don't get mad at the person for standing there. Like I mentioned, you get mad at the circumstance. This comes down to things like circumstance, like I mentioned before, because that's what we're being controlled by, is our circumstance. And there's only so much we can do to change a circumstance. And the only thing that you can do is really blame the circumstance. It almost begs the question, would you rather have something inanimate, screw with you, or would you have, say your vehicle when you're driving home or something malfunctions? You want to get mad at something, or a light changes and it forces you to get it, or whatever it may be, some kind of inanimate object angers you, um, or you stub your toe on a table, or you accidentally cut yourself when you're using a can opener or something. Is it better to get mad at one of those things, or you have someone to get mad at, something sentient, something that has intention, something that you can release your anger on? You can release your anger on something like, say, a table by punching it, but it's not going to do much good. Obviously, it's not going to be feeling anything, even though it's really about in you, what you're feeling in reaction to that. But I guess it almost begs the question, would you rather have something sentient piss you off, that has an intention or whatever it may be, or something that's not sentient that pisses you off, and you just sort of have that anger sort of pin up in you, and you can't do anything to release the anger. You can't get to the thing as much. You can't get to the thing in the way it got to you. um, you can almost beg that it's better to have something sentient, having intention piss you off, than something non-sentient, because at least you can show that your anger is there. Teach someone a lesson, not necessarily by kicking their ass or doing whatever it may be to prove your point, but at least you have something to release your anger on, that can at least feel some kind of wrath on your feelings or whatever it may be. Because like I say, our feelings are the thing that are the most irrational, but they're the only thing that we have. Those are the only thing that mean anything. Our feelings are perception. Our perception is the only thing we have. Our feelings are the things that matter, but our feelings are the things that get in the way, and our intelligence is the only thing that really matters when it comes to recognizing the thing that really matters is our feelings. So it's one of those things where it's all just a bunch of catch-22. We need our intelligence to recognize that our feelings mean something, and we have our feelings to have that something mean something. So we have the intelligence to recognize that feelings have meaning and value. Because without the feelings, obviously, there wouldn't be anything else going on in this universe except nothing, except a bunch of dust blowing out in space and a bunch of asteroids hitting suns and novaing suns, and a bunch of black holes sucking up comet dust and turning things into dark energy and all that stuff. Whatever it may be, it's all just a bunch of meaningless processes unless we're able to process it with our brains, our sentient conscious brains, in which Beg almost argues, what's the point in doing that when you're just in a world full of a bunch of frivolousness and it's only about the feelings of this other sentient beings. There's nothing innate in anything else. There's nothing that has any meaning outside of our sentience, and all we're doing is we're reflecting and projecting our value on everything onto everything else. And when we're in a world or a universe and a reality where that's the only function of our existence is the other sentient existence, then it really just shows how pointless the game is, I guess. Like the zero-sum game competition. Someone has to, every time someone wins, it has to be at least one loser. One of those circumstances, and you can't change that circumstance. It's sort of tied into the circumstance of reality, and there's nothing you can do to change it, except try your best to mitigate against what is already happening. So yeah, back to the main subject, like I was mentioning before, rationalizations. Using justifying, rationalizing mistakes you make. You don't get mad at the person for being there. You just you just you don't get mad at the person for being there. You can get frustrated with yourself, yeah. But when it comes down to intentions and justification for mistakes, you don't thrive with the mistake. Well, maybe you thrive in trying to correct for the mistake, but you don't rationalize the mistake you make. Learn a lesson. Don't rationalize it as a thing of the past and justify it just because that's the case. You do that and you realize you didn't learn a lesson. You may have learned one, it may just be words, but it's about learning a lesson and preventing something like that from happening again, because that's the only thing that we're really doing is correcting for mistakes of the past to prevent things like that from happening again. And that's what we've done progressively. We try to prevent fewer and fewer mistakes and correct for more and more suffering and pain and the issues that we deal with in existence. And the further on we go, in the end, when we realize is a lot of these things that we're doing to improve our lives is one of our ultimate downfall, when we realize the ultimate power of having this control finally gets to us, because the more control you have, the more likely you are to abuse that control and make that control be for anything but good. And that good, that bad, that not good is usually, in many cases, abuse of control, and the control then becomes, instead of power and a chaos, as the power ultimately goes to small little individuals. And in that case, so once you have that power, even if it isn't, it could just be chaos with a lot of power now. But then again, it can also just be someone reigns ultimate control, and that becomes an issue in and of itself. Well, you can argue that that's better than some kind of chaos mechanism that has absolutely no motivation of being good or bad or anything. It has no motivation to be good. It just lets things happen. But ultimately, it could be chaos or an abuse of power by any number of individuals, and that eventually leads to some kind of great detriment that can end up being something that destroys us all. Like we're going to end up killing ourselves with the technology that we have at this point in time. And that's only one of the ultimate fates that we may have to deal with. So yeah, you can't correct for a violation. That's another way of putting it. You can't correct for the fact that you had a child, the violation of their rights and their well-being to be left alone. You can't go back and correct for that mistake. All you can do is try your best to to mitigate the mistake and prevent as few things as possible. Don't create someone just to eat. If you have no problems in life, no character building processes, you're just going to create someone to eat a meal every day and wake up, eat a meal, work their 2 hours of work that we've finally been able to, minimize. They do their work, they do the process, they go into the stalls, or they go into they go in to get milked. They eat their meal, they eat their grass, sort of like, animals, domesticated animals. You'll live a life like them. You'll eat your grass, you'll get milked, you'll be useful in some way, right? Whatever that may be. Even then, you might not be useful, you just might come into existence to be something to be useful to, instead of being useful yourself. And the useful things will be the things that aren't even sentient anymore. But whatever that may be. Yeah, so, yeah. You'll come into graze on the grass outside. You'll eat your meal, you'll come inside, you'll take a nap, wake up, you'll stroke off or something, and you'll do the same process over and over again. Take your weight loss pill so you don't get fat, eat as much as you want. It doesn't seem much like a purpose to me. It seems like a pointless purpose, and the only thing that gives our life purpose, like I mentioned before, is the pointless, frivolous, not really pointless, but the life character building and being useful in some way. And that's the only thing that makes our life worth living in any way. There's nothing more to this game. It's either you realize the game is silly, or you buy into the game and you play the game through all the good times and the bad times and live life and stagnate, or you go forward and you let life show its true colors in other ways, to the other extreme, other than pure chaos. Let it show it in the pure chaos in another form, right? Obviously it's determined, but chaos, sort of like I eat you. We're being part of this evolutionary game where you kill me, and there's no rules. I kill you. I'll come and kill you because you killed me. I'm hungry. I got to kill you to eat. That kind of thing. Sort of like being cavemen. That kind of thing back in the day. In the 10,000 and the BC era, and even beyond that. But yeah, there's no point. Or you can show it in the other way. You can realize just how pointless everything is by letting all this technology sweep in, and you realize I gotta be useful some way, but I just came here to eat, shit, piss, and jerk off, take a nap, and then, repeat the process until I die. And that just sort of defeats the point of life. And life is just about having a point to create character, to reproduce, to do the same thing. I mean, it doesn't really have much of a purpose that has any reasonable or grace to it. It's just a kind of silly game that doesn't do anything useful. So it's kind of pointless. It does nothing but use and abuse the things that it's bringing to existence as a mechanism. Because that's what the mechanism is relying on. So it's kind of doing that silly thing. So yeah. I mean, that's really the idea. In psychology, you can't correct for mistakes. So why make the mistakes to begin with? I mean, why make the mistakes to begin with, right? But there's nothing you can do. That's life. It's about making mistakes. There's no way you can avoid making those mistakes. You have to make the mistakes. There's no way you can avoid making mistakes. And you think of it as a thought experiment that I brought up before. Why learn or build character if you don't have to go through the thing to begin with, as if that's something that's realistic. It's not realistic because you're brought into this game and it's about building character. Be psychological character and recognizing the frivolous futility of existence, or the character of going through the daily grind of hammering nails into a piece of wood, a 2x4, or whatever it may be. Character building some way, physically, psychologically. You're going to build character some way. It's going to be the inevitable thing that you do. You're going to be forced to do something, react a certain way, build some kind of resistance up to existence. Resistance to existence. You're going to be forced to do that because it's part of the game. It's not a reasonable thought experiment. You can think of it as a thought experiment, but it's not a reasonable, practical one that exists in reality. If it is, then it almost defeats the point in even making the thought experiment, because it almost seems pointless. Because why have the thought experiment if when that's possible, right? Um, but it's a reasonable possibility not to build character. And I would argue the only way to do that is not to make the same mistakes over and over again, and to try your best not to violate someone else's rights. And obviously, like, we can't do that because we're all part of the game now, and we're all kind of violating, but not necessarily, but we are kind of violating because we all exist and we're all interacting with each other, even if we don't necessarily have a direct effect on someone, even if it's not us and it's just everyone else, and it's just we're just pieces moving around, and it's not me, but it's the thing that's I'm in. It's the vessel, it's the universe I'm in that's controlling me, not me interacting with someone else. It's not my interaction with them, it's me being a victim, like them being a victim, interacting with each other in the same game that we really aren't interacting with. We're interacting in the game, but we're not interacting with each other directly. We're just interacting. We're the pieces, but we're not the thing having the direct effect. It's the universe and the determinism that has the effect, um, more than, say, we do, even though we're the pieces or the circumstance. We're representing the circumstance. And another thing, mention is like representation and stuff like that. That I want to mention is, sort of like, it's a non sequitur, but a lot of the things that we do to represent our emotions, like saying a piece of music, a movie, we're not really fixing the universe in any real way. We're not changing the fundamental aspects of the universe or reality. We're not changing anything. We're, you listen to a piece of music, you relate to it. You watch a movie, you relate to the emotions or whatever, maybe the circumstance. You're just doing it to mitigate the harm that you've already felt because you feel that circumstance, or you're being forced to feel a circumstance. I mean, even though you haven't had it, or you're compensating for it by emotionally being able to relate to someone. That's one of those things. Also, all it does really when you're doing this thing, it's not changing life. It can change your life by, obviously, it has an effect. It's something that you interacted with, based on the interactions of the reality, the universe around you, that dictated the interaction that you would have that cross paths with that circumstance to happen. But it doesn't do anything to change reality, because it's about representing reality more than anything. You're experiencing a direct representation of reality. It represents it, and that's all you're really doing when you're, say, creating a song that someone can relate to, or creating a movie or a show or piece of work or art, whatever it may be. Anything representation of emotions is just a representation of emotions that you can find someone else can relate to. Obviously, they can change, they can understand, oh, it's not so bad because someone else feels the same way as I do. But it's still the same thing. It's still just something that represents your emotions. It doesn't change reality. It just represents the emotions. That's all. The thing that we're doing is representing the emotions. We're not changing how the emotions can be felt. The emotions can change. They have an interaction. They react a certain way, but you're not going to create a new emotion. That wasn't possible before. It's just something, the way you're doing is you're making someone feel something based on something they already felt, or you're making them feel now, which, why have that feeling now, or why have the feeling to begin with, to feel the feeling, to compensate for the feeling you had before, to make yourself feel better by realizing someone else feels similarly to you. So why go through that process? So either have a feeling you don't need to feel because you never felt it, or, compensating for a feeling by realizing someone else feels the same way as you. So it's either compensating or you're getting something new. And the new is usually a negative, and you're about to correct for that negative by going to something else and compensating for it, sort of like, say, another person would have done by listening to the first thing and compensating for it that way, or relating to it. So it's just a representation. It's not a changer or a life changer. It's a life representer more than anything. So, yeah. So you can't correct for the past violations or whatever. You shouldn't rationalize because it's already happened and just go on with the same mistake you made. You killed someone, it's already happened. You rationalize and you justify it. You rationalize it with a justification that it already happened, and you move on and you make the same mistake over and over again. And you don't find any guilt or regret in the thing. Obviously, guilt's useful when it needs to happen, but it's useless as an emotion when you don't realize you're the direct effect you may have had on something. If you didn't, if guilt's a useless emotion if it's an irrelevant one unless it was useful, and it's a useful emotion when it's for the right reasons, and you're feeling for the right reasons, whatever it may be. But yeah, I think that's all I need to mention. Viewfinder thingy. It's hard not to look at it sometimes. Thinking, I look kind of weird at this angle. This thing makes me all look all flabby and shit. And shit. Anyway, I think that's all I need to mention. Yeah, I can always just, like I do, shoehorn something into the next video I make. I miss something on this subject, but yeah. Once it's happened, it's circumstantial, and can't change it, violations, and try not to do it and learn your lesson if you made the mistake. That's all we're here doing, really, in the end. So, that's all I want to mention, so thank you for the long video. I'm sorry. I haven't made a video in a while, and it's a long one. Hey, at least I'm getting back into the swing of things. Swing of things. Swing of things. Not my notes in my hands. Anyway, yeah. If I have anything else to mention, I'll mention it next time on another video, or whenever I remember something new, I'll write it down on my notes and make another video. So, yeah. Thank you, and until next time. Bye-bye.